Okay, we're gone. We are good to go.
Now, just want to mention the weather for you because we've found out that the last decade has been quite extraordinary, really, in terms of weather. In case we didn't know it already, Isabel is here. I mean, some of the hottest and some of the wettest weather we've seen.
I know, it's second warmest, second wettest decade. We're talking 2010 to 2019. I mean, it's unusual as well in that there's been more frequent high temperature records than low temperature records as well. So there's obviously a warming trend. It's not been great, as you know. We've had the flooding, didn't we? Sheffield, record-breaking rainfall. We've had 38.7 was our maximum temperature. They had the hottest summer and the warmest winter temperature in 2019 as well. Pretty unusual. And the problem is, you know, we have to keep an eye on things because that sort of trend continuing. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if 2020 was another very interesting year. More weather, though, coming up soon.
Lovely. Isabel, thank you. Now, it is London Fashion Week for men, believe it or not, celebrating the creativity and diversity in the city, which has made London an international hub for men's clothing. Last year, more than £15 billion was spent on menswear in the UK.
What do you do?
Though, I have to say, let's head to central London.
That's because you're a square. You just buy square shit off the peg.
Of the British Fashion Council, Dylan Jones. Good to see you. I know we see a lot of these very trendy men on the catwalk. I'm a bit surprised that men are spending £15 billion on fashion. Are we becoming a bit more fashion conscious?
I think we always have been, but I think there's been such a huge surge in menswear
An overcast
retail
today
in the last
here
few
in
years,
Tehran.
which is why the figures are so high.
And we're going to Baghdad.
50% of the fashion retail in this country, and it's been an extraordinary success for young British designers.
What is it that British designers are doing so well, do you think?
I think there's something in the water. I think there's an incredible regenerative quality to design in this country. And as you look at the schedule for the next 3 days in London, it's full of fantastic young designers.
Is there a British style, particularly?
I don't think there's a British style so much, but we've always been very good at tradition.
And
we've always been very good at rebellion. And if you look at every major youth cult since the end of the Second World War, they're all British. And as I say, there's
visibility is horrible today, so we're going to
in this country, combined with enormous resources in tailoring. Savile Row is still very strong. So the combination of those forces make for a very, very vibrant environment.
We're going to use terrain following
for men, and I'm saying this from a man who is, you know, in my mid-40s now. Is there often seems to be a
Are you
lot
fishing
of
for compliments?
Well, but there often seems to be this sort of very sort of modern, youth-driven fashion element. How does that sort of balance out with the, you know, the tailored look, the Savile Row sort of look, the more classic look in a way?
I think if you look at if you drill down into the detail, and if you look at where the real surges in trade have been, it's not been in the cutting edge of the business. It's in mainstream fashion. And I think that men generally in this country are probably better dressed now than they've ever been, but they're not wearing three-legged trousers or orange jumpsuits to work. They're just spending more money on regular clothing and looking much better for it.
In terms of the British fashion industry, what's your
I've got a
thoughts on
trendy
where
suit.
we're gonna be in, I mean, not actually after the end of January, but January next year when we are fully out of the EU. I mean, what is the industry doing to gauge for that?
Well, there have been huge concerns about this because of the trade deals and the issues concerning the movement of goods and the movement of people. And I think there is a huge sense of optimism about this year, but also those deals really need to be done, and the fashion industry collectively needs to be supported comprehensively by the government.
Yeah, I guess people don't necessarily understand how big a role fashion plays in our economy here in the UK. I mean, some of these figures floating about now, put it into some sort of context. It is a huge money spinner.
Well, the fashion industry in this country is bigger than the British car industry. And I think that often, I think that the industry is looked upon in a particularly narrow way. But if you look at all the ancillary services that surround the industry in terms of people, support services, PR industries, taxi companies, hotels, models, stylists,
This is what UK
PRs,
news
photographers,
tells you,
etc.
talks about all the fucking time. They don't tell you about what's happening in the world.
Well, look, Dylan,
It's all
really good to
shite.
talk to you this morning. I'm sorry it's down
And
the
you.
line, so you can't see me, because I know you'd be blown away if you could see what I was wearing this
I've
morning.
heard you're a very, very well-dressed chap.
I bet you're
Very,
wearing a
very well
fucking
dressed.
suit, because you're just a greasy maggot
Take
that
care.
wears shit off a peg with no fashion sense whatsoever.
Elegance, it has to be said. Though I do try my best. Someone who always looks fabulous, of course, is our Isabel. She's got the
Only because they told you that's what you're supposed to wear. Never catch me wearing a fucking suit, looking like a twat.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Hello, I'm going to Austin Green. I want to look like a
Yes, your socks
twat.
look
Oh,
good
very
thing.
easy, sir. They've got lots of
Star Trek
twat
socks, I don't
fucking
know.
clothes.
Yeah, weather-wise today, then front clearing southeastwards with some brighter skies following. Fresher weather, though, behind the front. Quite a marked drop in temperature, which I'm sure you'll notice, because out there this morning it's already around 10 or 11 degrees, and temperatures will drop as the winds swing northwesterly. But there's a lot of fine weather today with some sunshine. 1 or 2 showers across these more western areas, more frequent showers, though, with the strongest winds in northern Scotland. Away from the north, though, a mostly fine weekend ahead.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Baghdad, here we come. What shite should we talk about now? Oh, let's forget all about what's going on in the world. Let's talk about football. All the greatest sports news. Sports news isn't news. Sport, innit? If I wanted sport, I'd go on a sports channel, wouldn't I? See who's playing fucking darts. Or tiddlywinks, or the world champion fucking whatever. Like, I'm not interested in sport, okay? Stick sport right up your ass. Oh, it's a fucking horrible day. I'm not doing that, by the way. Terrain following radar. We are 1,000 foot above the ground. If you look at the radar, which is down here, RA, radar altitude, 1,000 feet, and the aeroplane will stay at 1,000 feet at 500 miles an hour. This means auto throttles are on, so the aircraft is flying it a lot more efficiently than I can. We're just going to head for Baghdad. It's great fun flying in Iran, I like that a lot. There's the Salt Lake. going to be heading down here. This VOR, which is that one there. Tune that in. Blue line, look, coming round. It's picked up the VOR. Distance is 60 miles. At 500 miles an hour, that won't take long at all. Except the visibility improves. Although $10 o'clock.
This is Sky News today. It's 9 o'clock. Here are the headlines for you.
9 o'clock in the UK.
Kills Iran's most powerful military commander in an airstrike at Baghdad's international airport.
That's where we're going.
Iran warns of a harsh retaliation after the death of Major General Qasem Soleimani.
Harsh retaliation.
Celebrations in Iraq, but US troops under threat there with fears of a far larger conflict between America and Iran. Also this morning, the evacuation begins. The Australian military starts a mass rescue operation to save people from the bushfires.
People getting to places of safety right now is incredibly important because in about 24 hours from now or even less, the situation will be far more dangerous.
The latest figures reveal the last decade was officially the second hottest in the past 100 years in the UK. Wanted, weirdos and misfits. The Prime Minister's advisor, Dominic Cummings, issues a radical plan to recruit new civil servants in Westminster.
Dominic Cummings, so he can get all his mates' jobs.
Very good morning to you and welcome to Sky News today. Now, the United States says that it has killed Iran's most powerful military commander in Baghdad, that's in an airstrike, because he was actively planning to attack American diplomats and service members in the country. But Major General Qasem Soleimani, he's the head of Iran's elite Quds force, which is involved in intelligence activities, was among 7 people who died in an attack that was sanctioned by President Trump. The US has this morning told its citizens to leave Iraq. The Iranian President Hassan Rouhani has pledged to revenge and says the assassination will make Tehran more decisive in its resistance. Well, let's take a look at actually what happened. Well, the attack happened in the middle of the night. It was at Baghdad International Airport, which is on the outskirts of the Iraqi capital. Our senior correspondent Ian Woods reports.
I'm really surprised the British are even covering it. I thought that we wanted to talk about football.
This was a swift, precise military strike, which has huge, unpredictable and possibly long-term consequences. The target was one of Iran's most senior leaders. Qasem Soleimani was in a convoy at Baghdad airport when it was struck by 3 American missiles. His death will send shockwaves through the Middle East and almost certainly lead to a violent retaliation from Tehran. A Pentagon statement made clear who gave the order for his assassination. At the direction of the president, the US military has taken decisive defensive action to protect US personnel abroad by killing Qasem Soleimani, the head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Quds Force, a US-designated foreign terrorist organization. President Trump, normally so explicit in his tweets, posted only an American flag without any comment. The past week has seen a steady escalation in the conflict between the US and Iran, which has gone way beyond the familiar war of words. Protesters laid siege to the US embassy in Baghdad. That was in response to American airstrikes which killed 24 Iranian militiamen, which in itself was retaliation for a rocket attack on a military base in Iraq. But this takes the tit-for-tat action to a whole new level. Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif called the move extremely dangerous and a foolish escalation. It comes as hundreds of American troops have been deployed to the region, with President Trump issuing not a warning, but a direct threat that Iran would pay a big price for attacks on American facilities.
What was it they said? You can't do a damn thing.
To stop endless wars in the Middle East may just have accelerated one. Ian Woods, Sky News, Washington.
Not today.
Well, as you'll know, tensions between the United States and Iran have been escalating in the region for the past week. More than 30 rockets were launched at an Iraqi military base last Friday that killed an American contractor and wounded 4 Americans and also 3 Iraqi servicemen. US officials blamed Iranian-backed militia for that attack. And then there were US airstrikes that followed quickly in retaliation, killing 25 fighters of the Iran-backed militia Kataib Hezbollah. Well, that prompted pro-Iranian militia to storm the US embassy in Baghdad on New Year's Eve. It was a move that the US said was backed by Tehran. The protest lasted until New Year's Day. Well, 750 US soldiers are now being deployed to the Middle East to bolster security. Well, our Foreign Affairs editor, Deborah Haynes, is here. We talk a lot about tensions, don't we, Deborah, in the region. Iran is considering this a declaration of war.
Yes, it's hard to overstate the significance of the targeting of Qasem Soleimani. He's a man who has been instrumental in Iranian foreign policy, particularly military foreign policy, for the last 2 decades, since he became the leader of the Quds Force, which is the elite end of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, and has been the force that's been deployed in the region. He's been instrumental in creating what people describe as an arc of influence across the Middle East, with Iranian-backed Shia militias helping to advance Iran's foreign policy, often to the cost of Western interests. In particular for Britain, Qasem Soleimani became a household name for British soldiers when they were deployed to southern Iraq following the 2003 invasion, when Iranian-backed militias there inflicted huge damage and deaths on British troops. So deciding to go after him, to go after the most powerful military figure in Iran, is a big, bold move by America, and they will be expecting a response. There's no way the Iranians will let the killing of Qasem Soleimani go unanswered. And actually, we're seeing now the US have issued a statement, the US Embassy issuing a statement calling on people to leave, American citizens. It says specifically, due to heightened tensions in Iraq and the region, the US Embassy urges American citizens to heed the January 2020 travel advisory and depart Iraq immediately. US citizens should depart via airline while possible, and failing that, to other countries via land. It really is a statement that speaks to concern that this is going to escalate.
Iran has promised vigorous revenge. What does that look like? What are their options?
It has a variety of options. Obviously, on the ground in Iraq, there are thousands, tens of thousands of militiamen that have been trained and funded and supported by Iran. And a number of their leaders were also killed in this strike at the Baghdad airport overnight. And they're saying that they're ready for war, ready for battle. So they could hit American troops in Iraq. Iran could also potentially try to strike America directly using its own forces, maybe targeting US warships or other military targets in the Gulf. But the attack against Qasem Soleimani does really show Iran's limitations and America's geographic advantage. It's highly unlikely that Iran would be able to attack America on its soil. And also the Iranians are going to have to think, do they really want to start a war with a superpower? Or are they going to try to limit their response to a level that doesn't trigger all-out war? It's a very, very tricky gamble. And right now, the stakes are so high. If they do decide to push their response too far, you can expect an overwhelming response back by the Americans.
Yeah, okay, all right. Well, we'll be watching and monitoring that very closely. Deborah, thank you. Now to Australia now, where mass evacuations have begun of thousands of people who are fleeing bushfires in Victoria, where a state of disaster has been declared for the first time in its history. Naval ships and military aircraft have been deployed to help those rescue efforts. Fires have been burning more than 12 million acres of bushland across Australia so far this season, destroying destroying over 1,000 homes and killing at least 18 people. Conditions are expected to worsen again over the weekend as high temperatures and strong winds return there. Well, Sky's Tom Cheshire has travelled to the remote town of Malakuta in Victoria, where some 4,000 people have been cut off by the flames.
Finally, a way out.
We're going to wait for a little boat to come up, take it on a bigger boat.
They've been stranded here, completely cut off, since Sunday, when a firestorm turned Malakuta into a hellscape. Around 1,000 people signed up for evacuation. This family had sheltered from the blaze on New Year's Eve on the beach.
Good to get away from the Sunday heat wave. I think it's coming through. So.
Yeah, were you worried about what might happen again?
Yeah, I think there's maybe a potential that there could be another bushfire, so it'd be nice to go home.
So they're going out now, any sort of boat they can, ferry loads, shuttling people, just get out of the way as they come past. But after 5 days stranded here, this is deliverance.
This was only the beginning of their journey. It's a 20-hour voyage to their final destination, well away from the fires. But they're in good care, welcomed aboard by the Navy. Thousands of others are evacuating Victoria and New South Wales. Saturday could bring fire conditions as bad or worse than what we've seen so far. Victoria declared a state of disaster, the first in its history. It means authorities can forcibly evacuate people.
This is a ferocious fire that is still out there, and the climatic conditions are going to be very difficult to contain that in the next 24 to 48 hours. That's why the evacuation messages are so incredibly important.
Those in Malakuta were told to bring only the bare necessities aboard. So they did. This nightmare is at least finally over. But there may be more to come. The landing craft made its way to the main ship through a blanket of smoke. The fires are still burning. Tom Cheshire, Sky News, Malakuta.
Well, let's get all the latest from Tom Cheshire now.
This is inside the evacuation zone. This town, on Friday night, a busy tourist town, is completely dead. All the shops are shut, all the restaurants are shut. The supermarket is now shut, so everyone has left this town because they've been told to get out while they can. And the similar scenes are being repeated across Australia, especially Victoria and New South Wales. 100,000 people have evacuated. It's the biggest evacuation, peacetime evacuation in Australia's history. It shows you how seriously authorities are taking what is to come. And that's what everyone's worried about. Saturday, tomorrow, weather is going to change. Right now, it's getting a bit cooler. It's not very windy at all. Tomorrow, it's going to go up into at least 36 degrees Celsius is one prediction. It's going to be very, very windy as well. Those are perfect conditions for fire to spread, and that's what people are worried about. The fires are still raging. They're not far that way in the bush, and they're all around this sort of area, in that border area, especially between Victoria and New South Wales. There are fires burning either side of the border, big fires. And the worry is those two fires in particular could combine to create a new, huge fire. But the other thing is we can't really predict exactly what's going to happen. You know which way the wind might go. The wind could change, of course, but then there's ember attacks. So this is when a fire is burning and it sends embers, you know, hundreds of meters. And when we're talking about embers, these aren't sort of small bits of ash floating about. They're big chunks of wood. And if one of those can travel that far, it starts it starts a new fire, and that is unpredictable, that is chaotic, and that's why they've decided that residents in this town should go. So that's the situation here. People are bedding in, they're getting ready for what's to come. They're determined perhaps to defend their properties if it makes it far this down. They've got the sea right there in the worst case scenario. No one knows quite how bad tomorrow is going to be. We've been told it could be as bad or even worse as the horrific scenes we saw earlier this week. Right now they're getting ready for that Saturday to come, for those very, very dangerous conditions.
Well, here in the studio, Inzamam Rashid has all the latest for us. These images coming out of Australia, just horrifying. I mean, the sight of those fires, people stranded on the beach, people being taken to safety on warships. and it's only going to get worse, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Well, you know, the forecast, it's high temperatures, but it's not just the high temperatures, Sam, it's the wind, which is the big factor. With that wind can push those embers right across in different directions and really force that fire to then gather ground. And the fire does gather ground very, very quickly. As soon as it touches the ground, it can spread rapidly. And that's one of the main issues that firefighters out in Australia have faced for many weeks now. This has been going on since around September. It's killed at least 20 people in the two large states, and dozens remain missing currently, Sam. The fires have destroyed way over 1,000 homes, I think around 1,300 homes in total. But we heard there from Tom in his report that many people are being evacuated now, told to leave their homes. The authorities are saying that some people will want to go, some people will be happy to stay, but they are urging people to leave as soon as possible. Thousands of people fleeing parts of neighbouring New South Wales, from Victoria as well. But obviously this really is a humanitarian issue in Australia right now, people wanting to leave their homes because of these ravaging fires. There's also another side to the story as well. When you look at it politically, the Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison, he has, Sam. Yeah, we saw he went to a village where he looked at some of the devastation caused, and he was heckled there by locals, people telling him to get lost, that he's an idiot, that he clearly just didn't know enough. He insists that Australia is meeting the challenge better than most countries in terms of climate change and fulfilling international targets. But obviously, as we heard from Tom there, and as we know from the forecast, higher temperatures coming, and the winds are also going to be quite high as well. So for Australia, these fires could continue for many weeks.
Yeah, frightening weekend ahead. Okay, Lindsay, thank you. Now let's take a look at some of the day's other news now. And figures out today show that the last decade was the second hottest in the past 100 years in the UK. It also holds the 8th high temperature records. The Met Office says the period from 2010 to 2019 was also the second wettest decade in the last century. 3 electricity companies are going to pay a total of £10.5 million to the Energy Watchdog's Redress Fund. That's following major power cuts that we saw last summer. Over 1 million people were left without electricity last August after a power station and a wind farm both failed, triggering rail chaos. Well, in a statement, the National Grid electricity system operator said it will address the issues raised and work in the best interests of the consumer. A British teenager convicted of lying about being gang raped in Cyprus has asked the Prime Minister to help her return home to the UK. The 19-year-old alleged she was raped in a hotel room in Ayia Napa last summer, but claims that Cypriot police forced her to sign a retraction statement. A controversial photo posted on Facebook showing 18 firefighters posing in front of a burning house in the United States is going to be investigated, fire officials have said. The photo, which was posted on New Year's Eve to celebrate a boss who was retiring, has been branded as inappropriate and unprofessional by Detroit's fire commissioner. The post has since been taken down. Now, the Prime Minister's senior advisor says that he wants weirdos and misfits to apply for jobs in Downing Street. In a blog post, Dominic Cummings appears to outline a radical shake-up in the way civil servants are hired in Westminster. Well, our political correspondent, Tamara Cohen, is live for us in Westminster. Now, it's extraordinary stuff, Tamara. Tell us more.
Hi, Sam. Well, Dominic Cummings, who's the Prime Minister's chief advisor, credited with masterminding the campaign to leave the EU, has now got his sights set on shaking up how the government works. He says he's got profound problems with how the government makes decisions and doesn't feel the Prime Minister has the right expertise around him. So to that end, he wants to hire people to work in Downing Street and across the government who fill a variety of roles from, according to this blog post he put online last night, leading scientists and policy experts to what he calls super talented weirdos. This is a bit of the job description that he posted online. He talked about weirdos and misfits with odd skills. He says we need some true wildcards, artists, people who never went to university and fought their way out of an appalling hellhole. He says he doesn't want any more public school bluffers or Oxbridge Arts graduates, and one person he wants to recruit for a specific job to be his own personal assistant. And he says that this person, a young graduate, will be expected to work evenings, weekends, not be in a relationship so they can commit to the job.
No doubt
so
female.
all CVs for that to be sent to 10 Downing Street. Now, I think we are expecting in the next few weeks, as the backdrop to this, some kind of shake-up of government departments. Mr Cummings has made pretty clear that that is something that he wants to take forward in government. And in this blog, he talks about the challenges of delivering Brexit as a reason for doing that, and also says that with the government's big majority, they can make decisions which may be unpopular in the short term to tackle big policy problems. So it sounds like this is a government which very much wants to shake things up. The reaction from the civil service has been pretty wary. The message we're getting from civil service unions is that the civil service already hires talented people from outside, and that the problem they are facing is stagnating pay.
Yeah,
Vomiting. I can hear vomiting from
in
the civil
politics
service.
Tomorrow we've got the Labour leadership contest hotting up, haven't we? Tell us a bit more about that.
Yes, that's right. It's expected to officially kick off next week, and I think we may have another declaration later this evening of Jess Phillips. The Birmingham MP is expected to throw her hat into the ring later on. That's her there. She's been quite a staunch critic of Jeremy Corbyn, and her supporters suggest she will offer the cleanest break from Mr Corbyn and his ideas. She's already gathering some support, but although the clear frontrunner at the moment seems to be Keir Starmer, the shadow Brexit secretary. Now, he hasn't officially declared either yet. We expect that may come over the weekend, but a poll out yesterday put him in the lead among party members, and the crucial thing is, of course, that party members will decide who wins the leadership. He seems to be ahead at the moment of the choice, we understand, of the current leadership, which is Rebecca Long-Bailey, who was just seen there walking next to Keir Starmer. She is seen as closest to Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell, but is behind in the polls at the moment. We're expecting them all to announce in the next 48 hours or so, because the leadership contest will officially kick off on Monday, when there's a meeting of Labour's ruling committee to decide how long the contest will last and exactly what the rules are, who can vote in it, whether it will just be existing members or whether new people can sign up. So there may be a few rows about all of that if there's an attempt, it appears, to some members to stitch it up for one or other of the candidates.
Oh, rows in the Labour Party, unheard of. OK, Tamara, thank you very much. Now, 2/3 of universities and colleges have seen an increase in the number of the students dropping out. That's according to official figures. At some institutions, rates have increased by more than 5%. Well, joining me now to talk this through is Rachel Hewitt. She's Director of Policy and Advocacy at the Higher Education Policy Institute. Morning to you, Rachel. What's your take on these figures?
Well, it's a real shame when any student drops out of university and doesn't get the university experience that they went into it looking for. I think there can be various reasons why that happens, and we still have relatively low numbers of people dropping out. But it is something that universities really need to get to grips with to ensure that these rises don't continue for students.
And in terms of your understanding of what's going on, is it that the wrong students are ending up at university, or is there something wrong with what the university is offering?
So I think it can be a mix of things. So for some students, university actually won't have been the right choice for them, and maybe it's the right thing for them to do to drop out. Some students may be experiencing other things, like different personal circumstances going on, perhaps needing to, having changes in caring responsibilities, or even things like mental health issues that mean that actually university isn't the right place for them to be anymore. So there can be a number of reasons, and obviously in every case individuals will have different choices to make, but yes, universities need to consider how they can support students in all these different cases.
Some of the papers this morning are quick to lay the blame at the door of the increasing number of unconditional offers, and saying that it's just people who are not good enough are being offered places at university.
Well, I think it's really important that universities are making choices about who they recruit based on students that are going to thrive at their university, And we know that universities are being held to account on this by the regulator, the Office for Students, who are really focusing on making sure that universities aren't just getting people into university, but supporting them throughout the whole journey of university. So I think it is something that universities are being kind of held to account over if there are cases where they're taking students who maybe aren't in the best position to go on and meet expectations that they've got for their university experience.
Some universities are tackling this head on, though, aren't they? I read that Nottingham Trent is doing quite pioneering things. What are they doing? Is it effective? And what should universities be doing generally to try and get those numbers down?
Yeah, so Nottingham Trent, I know, have a scheme getting rid of the unconditional offers, and that could be a way that universities look at this, but there's also other things such as increasing access to support systems. So universities have fairly comprehensive support systems in place, but what's really important is that for students who get into this crisis point, they know how to access those support services, and also that they're supported from the very beginning of their experience. So some universities have put a lot of effort into welcome weeks and supporting students through that transition process at the really critical points where students may otherwise be dropping out.
Okay, thank you very much, Rachel Hewitt. Thanks for your time on Sky News. You're watching Sky News today. Coming up, we're going to get the view from a professor at Tehran University on what the fallout will be of that US airstrike which killed Iran's most senior military commander.
What's going to happen now? It's like a war zone in Hong Kong. They have lost control.
Stuart Ramsey's there for us. Stuart, what's going on?
Hey, I'm not sure if you can hear me. That was beginning of really an epic few hours. We had no idea what was about to happen.
Why are you questioning him? He's clearly marked as press.
We knew that what we were broadcasting and what we were showing was significant.
It definitely felt like Hong Kong was burning.
Oscar was just 14 when his love of cycling spiraled into something darker. He's talented, but a belief that losing weight would make him faster slowly slipped into an all-consuming eating disorder.
I had very low self-esteem. It wouldn't take much if someone told me, oh, you're looking healthy. I'd take that as an, I'd be like, oh my God, I need to lose some weight. I look normal. When it was at its worst, I would probably have small bowl of porridge, I'm talking like 20 grams of oats, go out on a 3-hour ride, come back, miss lunch, and kind of just sleep because I was knackered, but I thought if I sleep I'm not going to be hungry.
Encouraged by his cyclist peers, at his lightest he weighed just 45 kilos. Now 19, he's recovering, but the weight loss caused a dramatic dip in his hormones. The result, lasting osteoporosis.
It's a really fine line. It's a really, really fine line between being light enough to perform optimally and then being so light that it actually starts to affect your mental health and your physical health.
She says the problem is encouraged by social media, accounts promoting weight loss and professionals like Chris Froome promoting the scantity of their breakfasts. It can all have a disproportionate impact on groups of competitive young men. It's why Sam Woodfield founded his own team. 3 years ago, he was just 55 kilos and on the verge of breakdown. Now a healthy balance is central to his ethos.
The World Tour guys are only at their sort of lightest race weight for 3, 4, maybe 5 weeks maximum a year. You really don't need to be sort of just skin and bone. You can afford to carry a little bit more muscle mass.
People are now talking more about eating disorders in sport. The aim to keep cycling both healthy and fun. Helen Ann Smith, Sky News.
Welcome back. Back to our top story now. And Iran's most powerful military commander has been killed in a US airstrike in Baghdad, I should say. The Pentagon has confirmed Major General Qasem Soleimani was among 7 people who died in the attack that was sanctioned by President Trump. But what does this mean now for the already tense situation that exists between the United States and Iran? Well, joining me now to discuss this is Mohammed Morandi. He is professor at Tehran University. Good morning to you, Professor Morandi. This is being viewed, isn't it, in Iran as a declaration of war?
This is definitely an act of war against Iran because a senior military commander has been murdered by Americans, but it is also an act of war against Iraq because a senior Iraqi military commander and war hero who alongside General Soleimani drove back ISIS, he too has been murdered along with their entourage. So the Americans have created a situation and they've given the Iraqi resistance an opportunity to strike back legitimately, and they have given the Iranians the right to retaliate. And if I was a Western citizen from a Western country or someone from outside of the region, I would leave the Persian Gulf region, countries like the United Arab Emirates, where the Americans are very active, or Iraq. I would leave these countries as soon as possible.
The United States say that General Soleimani was part of a terrorist organization. He was planning terror-style attacks against U.S. interests.
Well, we are no longer living in the 19th century where a Western power creates a narrative and everyone must obey. The United States created Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, destroyed the country, and after 9/11 invaded it. The United States helped create Saddam Hussein, the monster. They gave him chemical weapons along with the Europeans to use even against his own people. Then they attacked Iraq, then they imposed sanctions, killing 1 million people, and then they invaded and destroyed the country, lying about nuclear weapons and links to Al-Qaeda. And then the United States and its allies, Saudi Arabia, they supported Wahhabi groups, extremist groups. They brought tens of thousands of them into Syria to destroy Syria, and many of them then went into Iraq. And it was Iran and General Soleimani and the Iraqi commander who was killed alongside with him, Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis, who stood and defended Iraq. If it wasn't for them, Baghdad would have fallen. If it wasn't for them, the tens of thousands of foreign fighters would have taken Damascus. We would have had black flags flying across the region. So the Americans who carried out an illegal invasion of Iraq have no right to complain about anything. They've destroyed Libya, they've helped the Saudis destroy Yemen. The United States is a menace to this region, and this is just the latest chapter, but this is an act of war against a state.
Well, the United States will say that it's been Iran's foreign policy that has resulted in a lot of this. I mean, you mentioned there the Yemen war. I mean, that narrative is told very differently from this country, from the United States, from what you've just described.
I think we all know who invaded Yemen and who imposed starvation on the country, and which countries have been supporting Saudi Arabia in the plunder and destruction of Yemen and the starvation of hundreds of thousands of people. And we know which countries are giving Saudi Arabia the weapons to carry out these crimes against humanity. And we know now who created ISIS and who funded the extremists. We know it from WikiLeaks, we know it from, and that's why one reason why Assange is now a political prisoner. We know from the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency document of 2012 and General Michael Flynn's own admission that the United States supported the extremists alongside with its allies in Syria to gain the upper hand, the same extremists that turned out to be ISIS. It's, even in Libya, it's across the board. The invasion of Iraq was an illegal invasion. And right now, the Americans have been carrying out attacks against Iraqi soldiers over the past week. in defiance of the Iraqi Prime Minister, in defiance of Iraqi sovereignty, in defiance of the will of the Iraqi people.
Okay, Professor Marandi, let's talk about what happens next. How is Iran going to respond to this, Professor Marandi? They've promised vigorous revenge, and yet they appear fairly exposed if the Major General can be assassinated in this way.
Well, I think it's quite obvious that any general can be assassinated when a rogue regime carries out such a strike. He was in the airport. He was at the Iraqi International Airport. He had just been received by Iraqi officials. But the U.S. regime, which knows no laws, which recognizes no sovereignty, decided to assassinate him. So there's nothing surprising about the Iranian actions. What is surprising is how Western governments and the Western media justify any atrocity that the regime in Washington carries out. Obviously, there will be severe consequences. If
what will they be, Professor Marandi?
Commander-in-chief or a major general in the armed forces of your country was assassinated, well, that's not for me to say. But what I can say is that this has united the Iranian population. The Iranian population demands the punishment of the United States and its allies. And contrary to the Western narrative and the Saudi and the Emirati narrative, where they constantly show images of former Ba'athis and Saddam Hussein and ISIS supporters in Baghdad, and they are fooled by their own propaganda that the Iraqis are happy. We will see in the coming hours and days and weeks where Iraqi public opinion stands on the atrocities committed by the United States and the murder of Iraqi war heroes that have been standing against ISIS. Americans are constantly in Western governments and think tanks are constantly being fooled by their own propaganda.
Professor Marandi, you say that you don't know what the response might look like from Iran, but at the same time, you're warning Westerners to evacuate countries like UAE, Iraq, even in Southeast Asia as well. So what do you have in mind?
Well, Southwest Asia, well, it's not what I have in mind. These countries have American military bases, and American aircraft fly from those bases. And an American drone just a while back flew from a base in the United Arab Emirates and was shot down in Iranian territorial waters. When the Emirates and Saudi Arabia are a part of the American war against the Iranian people, then they have to face the consequences, and therefore it's not a place for people to stay. I don't know what will happen, but I'm sure that the American presence in Iraq is no longer going to be sustainable. And I'm very doubtful that the U.S. Embassy in Iraq, which is not the embassy of a friend, but an occupation, is the size of the Vatican in the middle of Baghdad. This is just symbolic of how the Americans treat the rest of the world. This is not sustainable, the American presence in Iraq. And I think that time will tell that this will be a turning point in the region.
Okay, well, we'll see, won't we? Professor Mohammed Marandi, good to talk to you on Sky News. Thank you. You're watching Sky News Today. Coming up, as bushfires continue to rage across Australia, anger also rages over the government's handling of the crisis.
to wait for the land.
Welcome back. Now, as those bushfires continue to rage across Australia, anger is also raging among communities that feel that they've simply been forgotten in the crisis. Well, yesterday, the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, cut short a visit to the town of Cobargo in New South Wales, when locals shouted and made obscene gestures at him. They were angry about the perceived lack of support for their town. Let's take a listen.
How much money we have forgotten for New South Wales, Mr Prime Minister? How come we only had 4 trucks to defend our town? Because our town doesn't have a lot of money, but we have hearts of gold, Mr Prime Minister.
Nah, you're an idiot, mate. You really are. You won't be getting any votes down here, buddy. You're an idiot. We vote liberal around here. Nobody. No liberal votes. You're out, son. You are out. Good night, Peter. See you, mate. Bye. Come.
What about the people who are down, Mr Prime Minister? What about the people who have nowhere to live?
You're not welcome, you
People are frustrated. People have suffered great loss. They're feeling very raw, particularly where I was yesterday, and that's the case in many parts of the country. And so I understand how people are feeling. And if, however they wish to respond is a matter for them.
So where has Scott Morrison gone wrong? Well, joining me to discuss this are the Guardian columnist and environmental activist George Monbiot and Ollie Lane, who is a crisis communications expert. Good morning to both of you. George, to you first. I mean, he doesn't seem to be getting the not-so-subtle hint, does he, Mr Morrison?
Well, Scott Morrison started going wrong before he became Prime Minister, when he started waving around a lump of coal in the Australian Parliament and saying, don't be afraid of this stuff, it's great. Well, coal is what is to a large extent driving this crisis. This is climate breakdown, which has caused this incredible period of dry weather, the astonishing temperatures that we're seeing in Australia at the moment, which are at the heart of these massive conflagrations. And all the way along, Scott Morrison has been denying it, downplaying it, dismissing it, boosting the coal industry, crushing the renewables industry. So his problems go back a lot further than his inability to connect with the victims of these absolute horrific disasters taking place in Australia, because actually he is to a large extent responsible for those disasters.
Ollie, let's bring you in here. I mean, you're a crisis communications expert. It looks to me like you could have a high-profile client.
Well, if I was advising Mr Morrison, I'd be first clear that he needs to show an awful lot more leadership. He wasn't wrong in going to make those visits yesterday. Where he got it wrong is that he didn't go with any story. Fairly clear that if you're going to do something like that, you need to know what story it is you're going to tell, so you know what the media is likely to report. If you don't go with that, you're going to get a story that says Morrison gets heckled or Morrison gets a hard time. He didn't seem to know what he was going to say to those people. And he seemed surprised by the level of hostility that he was greeted with. Had he, for instance, made announcements in advance about the amount of money he was going to give to volunteer firefighters or to those people who had lost their homes or around evacuations, or had he simply connected better in advance, as George says, with people who have been suffering, then he could have negotiated those visits, which was the right thing to do. He needs to get out there and be more visible, but he could have negotiated those visits better and got a more positive story out of them.
Yeah, I mean, there's the practical side, isn't there? I mean, he should have thought about that, the leadership side, the money side of things, but just on a human level, I mean, he didn't seem to grasp the seriousness of the situation that people are facing, many of whom lost their homes, people are missing, all this wildlife has died. It's the empathy chip, isn't it, that seems to be missing?
Yeah, I think I'm sure he does care, but it's about showing it. And, you know, he didn't come back from his holiday. He seemed more interested in hosting a reception for the Australia and New Zealand cricket teams. He hasn't, as you say, connected. It's actually not too late for him. You know, this crisis is going to continue. That's not a good thing, but this crisis is going to continue. And if he wants an example in how to do things better, he could look across the Tasman Sea at how his counterpart in New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern, handled the Christchurch shootings in March, where she showed immediate empathy. She understood the mood. She personally connected to people and to the nation, and she took immediate action by talking about what she would do around gun laws.
George, do you think he can turn it around? I mean, his response, certainly in terms of his climate change and fossil fuel policy, he seems to just defend it.
No, I don't think he can. I mean, at this worst possible moment, we have the worst possible leaders. Not just Morrison, Trump, Bolsonaro, Johnson, Modi. You know, across the world, we have people who are basically washing their hands of their major responsibilities and playing this very demagogic card instead. And that's exactly what we don't need right now. And I think Morrison is a man of very limited capabilities, very limited empathy, very limited understanding of the vast responsibilities on his shoulders. And I just don't think he's a man who can turn this around.
But whatever kind of leader Australia has, I mean, you're not going to stop the bushfires from raging, are you? I mean, is there a solution to it? There's certainly not a short-term solution.
There isn't a short-term solution. I mean, there's some incredibly brave firefighters doing their best to contain these appalling fires. But, you know, in the long term, we have to stop climate breakdown because we're going to just see this happening again and again in one country after another. I mean, Australia is a horrifying glimpse. Well, I was about to say a horrifying glimpse of the future. It's a horrifying glimpse of the present. You know, we're seeing climate breakdown happening in front of our eyes. And this is just what scientists are predicting, except that it's happening earlier than the predictions. So what we desperately need is leaders of caliber to stand up and say, this is a global emergency, we are treating it as such, we're going to leave fossil fuels in the ground, we're going to make a massive and very rapid transition towards low carbon economies around the world to prevent this exceptional and horrific event from becoming the norm.
And just a final word from you, Ollie. I mean, Mr. Morrison's response to getting heckled was kind of to pack up and go home. And was that the right thing to do, to limit the sort of personal damage that he can cause, or should he be going out on the front foot and just trying to make amends?
I think he needs to be visible. I don't think he should be dominating the airwaves. That's never a good look either. But he needs to be getting out into those communities and connecting with people. But he needs to go there with a clear message of A, what he's going to say to those people, and B, what he's doing to improve the situation, both immediately and, as George says, longer term.
Okay, very good to have both of your perspectives there, George Monbiot and Ollie Lane. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're watching Sky News Today. Coming up, does a vegan or plant-based diet mean a healthier body? We're going to be discussing findings from a recent study in just a moment.
Hi, I'm Hannah Stott with the latest showbiz news. A warning, some flash photography is coming up. Nick Gordon, the ex-partner of the late Bobby Christina Brown, has died at the age of 30. Gordon's attorney confirmed his client's death in a statement. The cause of death was not given. It came nearly 5 years after Brown, daughter of singers Whitney Houston and Bobby Brown, was found face down and unresponsive in a bar in January 2015. DJ, musician and record producer Mark Ronson has reflected on his past year. In February 2019, he won Best Original Song at the Oscars for Shallow, the lead song from Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper's A Star Is Born. In the summer, he released his 5th studio album, Late Night Feelings, followed by a 5-hour-long set at Glastonbury Music Festival. And he ushered in 2020 with a headline performance at Edinburgh's Hogmanay in the Goblins Festival.
I think Glastonbury was definitely one of them. Getting to get on stage with Miley Cyrus and then King Princess and all these people that I'd worked with on my album, Late Night Feelings, and then also doing our own, whatever club night thing that we did there. And then, yeah, and certainly the Oscars is really surreal, and so it has been a pretty wild. Well, now that I'm a bit more grown up, I try to live most of my life like it's a New Year's resolution, but it's always fun to pretend you can't go to the gym too much the first week of May.
Well, I'm not going to need to dump any fuel this time.
Welcome back. Now, a study that was analysing the nutrition and health data of over 21,000 residents in the UK has identified several benefits of a vegan diet, including lower average blood glucose levels and lower levels of unhealthy cholesterol. But does this mean overall better health for people who choose a plant-based diet? Well, joining me now is Dr. Natasha Fernando, Head of Clinical Excellence at Medichex, who conducted this research. So answer the question, would you, for me? Dr. Natasha, is it better for us, a vegan diet?
Well, my advice is going plant-based is definitely a worthwhile direction to go. So if you're actually considering whole food, plant-based foods, unprocessed, if you're going vegan, it provides you the perfect avenue to go down that route. That's my stance on that generally, and I've recommended it to a lot of my patients. I can tell you specifically about a case that I've had experience of firsthand, where I've actually witnessed her diabetes being reversed from her going on a whole food plant-based diet.
But when you eliminate a very large food group like that, you do need to think about how you keep everything in balance, though, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you are actually having a well-planned, balanced, varied vegan or plant-based diet, then it is actually quite easy to get a lot of the essential nutrients that are needed. But one thing to be mindful of is vitamin B12. So vitamin B12 is very important for the health of your nerves and red blood cell production. We have actually found in vegans that they're a bit more prone to deficiency of this because vitamin B12 is mostly found in animal-based products. But you can actually find modest amounts of vitamin B12 in vegan food products such as fortified plant-based milks, tofu, nutritional yeast. My advice would be, however, if you're going to go strictly vegan, maybe consider some oral supplements. Other things to be mindful of, and I would advise that to anyone really, not just vegans, but ensuring that your iron intake is actually quite good on a plant-based diet. What I would suggest is having a lot of dark green leafy vegetables and lentils, beans, nuts, seeds are also really good sources.
Alternatively, just eat what you're supposed to
many
eat.
people are taking this up as part of veganuary. They're doing it as a New Year's resolution. Are there any health implications to just doing this cold turkey, or is it better to almost sort of gradually introduce it?
So it's actually whatever works for you. As I've said, if you actually decide to go fully plant-based, so long as you're actually planning it well, having a well-balanced, varied diet, then there is no reason why you're going to actually have any significant deficiencies.
Okay, and do you think that veganuary is turning into permanent lifestyle changes for people?
Yeah, it may actually turn into permanent lifestyle changes. They feel better on this diet. I do know a lot of my patients have actually decided to go down the whole food plant-based diet route and decided to continue further on this because they felt a lot better for it and it worked for them.
OK, well,
Shut
fascinating
up.
to talk to you. Dr. Natasha Fernando,
Stupid
thank
woman.
you very much for your time on Sky News.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.